time to get stuck back into our reverse ladder predictor. It's been good fun doing it across the way. Just an update because a couple of people have been asking for an update. We started way back when with position number 18. So 18, West Coast, 17, Hawthorn, 16, North Melbourne, 15, Richmond, 14, Freo, 13, St Kilda, 12, Western Bulldogs, 11, Melbourne, 10, Essendon, 9, Port Adelaide, 8, Gold Coast, 7, Greater Western Sydney, 6, Geelong, and in position 5... Cheer, the red and the white. The Sydney Swans, they were able to sneak back into the finals after an incredibly disappointing grand final, but albeit a grand final appearance. Now, last year, 12, 10 and 1, finished with a percentage of 110%. The most excited to see for me, of course, we categorise these positions by most excited to see, our sure thing, the hope for the season, the worry for the season, and the X's and O's tactical change for the season. Now, most excited. For me, now, full disclosure, I like the man. Wouldn't say I'm friends with him, but I've just got plenty of admiration for Brodie Grundy. I think he'd have the biggest chip on his shoulder in the history of the sport.
It would be enormous.
Because he was moved on by a club who gave him a, quote, lifetime deal.
Mm-hmm.
Only to see them move him on and then win a premiership a season later. Now, he has been to the D's in between, and that was a failed experiment alongside
which was the biggest talking story going into that season.
All summer. How will it work? Well, it didn't work, and he is now a Sydney Swan. So he's 29. He was healthy last year, so that was a query as well. Would his knee and other areas hold up? He was healthy last year. He's only 29. I reckon he's got one, maybe two real big seasons in him.
Oh,
I think
easy.
I'm going to say at some stage next year, he will be among the All-Australian ruck considerations.
I think this might be one of the best pickups of the year.
I'm glad you agree.
Yeah.
Sure thing. Tommy McCartan will just keep on rolling along. No one will talk about him, but he'll just keep doing the job and all the gun forwards without any fanfare or any love from the outside word. I bet you he gets plenty of love on the inside.
Yeah.
I bet you they get around him because his brother Paddy's unfortunately no longer there. We know what happened there. Dane Rampy's getting on and he's looking to be a little bit more of a rebounding defender these days. He missed plenty of footy last year. But Tom McCartan has not really put a foot wrong since that 2022 grand final. He had a tough day on grand final day opposed to Tom Hawkins, but he has not put a foot wrong since, and he'll continue to do so. The hope for me is that the forward line, the forward mix will be a net positive with life after Lance Franklin. So we know Amati's got plenty of talent as a big athletic key forward.
Tick.
Hayden McLean has shown plenty. Now I'll get to him in a moment.
Tick.
And Logan McDonald will be a long-term 40-plus goal kicker as well. You add in, so you've got those three big boys. You've got Isaac Heaney, who's dynamic. You've got Tom Papley, who's very, very dynamic. So you've got five guys who can really build a forward line together. And then you've got your workers like Will Haywood and others who can come in and play as pressure forwards and small forwards. So it's a really nice mix. It's a diverse group. It's a capable group. And it's certainly a group who I reckon playing with someone like Lance Franklin, you often were looking quickly, where's Buddy? Where do I need to be so that he can have his space? So I can get out of the road and I can just get the crumbs or the seconds or thirds after Buddy. Well, that's gone now. So I'm hoping they can really be a dangerous forward line. The worry for me is Hayden McLean because he showed a lot late in the season last year as the number one ruckman. He was fantastic late in the season as the number one ruck, taking marks around the ground, getting lots of possessions and being quite competitive in the ruck. Brodie Grundy is now the number one ruck in Sydney, make no mistake about it. So McLean has to go back to developing his forward craft to be the forward ruck.
Yes.
Now, as a forward, I think he's struggled. He doesn't move quite well enough in that forward 50 to be able to get involved in any other way other than taking a big mark. So he reminds me of a Coleman Jones or a Tom De Koning as a forward. They just look capable, but a little awkward. So that's the challenge for him. Does his progress get stunted or does he regress with Brodie Grundy now in town. And the X's and O's for me is Isaac Keaney. So in 2022, All-Australian year, 16.5 disposals per game, 49 goals. 2023, down to 15.5 disposals per game, only 30 goals. So it was a big drop-off.
Didn't finish in the top 10 BNF.
Big drop-off. He kicked 5 once against West Coast. They beat him by 171 points. You almost don't count it. Only twice last season, aside from that West Coast game, did he kick 3 or more goals in a game. His form dipped, and I think partly because he was struggling as a forward. Then they used him as a big-bodied on-baller. He played on Patrick Cripps one night at the SCG and did a great job body to body. I think they're just got to decide now, particularly without Franklin, is he a dangerous medium-sized forward who at times will isolate, will tell the big boys to get up the ground and will give him the 50? Or can he be a dynamic on-baller who can play on those big midfielders, those big inside mids, and then work off them? One way or another, settle him down and say, mate, we need you to be the best in one of those roles.
Position.
So that's my look at the Sydney Swans. I'm very bullish on what they can do in 2024. I'm
bullish on them as well. I think they'll bounce back, back into the later in September. Heaney's going to be the one. So I like the fact that you brought up Heaney, because I actually was disappointed with his season for what or who he is. His talent is unbelievable. He should be kicking 40 to 50 goals a year if he's a permanent forward.
Yep.
Probably more north of 50. And if he is going to go on ball, we're talking about a guy who could be one of the best on ballers in the competition. This is how great of a talent he is. So his output last year was well below, I think, what we all expected and what it should have been. Mills is the other one. How's he going to come back from his mishap?
And when will he get back?
Monday, the poor bugger. But Grundy, I love. I love that addition. I love Adams going in as well. Hamlin as well down back. Hamling, I should say, down back, who is a premiership player at the Bulldogs.
Yep.
Things didn't quite work over at the West with Fremantle, so I think that's going to be a really nice inclusion. The fact that Paddy McCartan went out, obviously with his concussion, and I love Errol Goulden.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I love his name, but
his game too.
Errol Goulden is just one of the premier on-ballers, and by the end of the year, we might be talking about him as one of the absolute best in the competition. So they've got plenty there. I love their forward line, what they can do now. I still think they're probably a year or two away from being a really solid forward line because they're still young. Amadi has got so much talent and is a really nice marking forward, can kick goals. McDonald the same. McLean, as you said, he's going to have to learn now to be, if they do play the 3 talls down there, he's going to have to learn how to be that ruck forward.
Yep.
But maybe that's just where you've got to learn, or they've got to understand what they have there. Now, you're right, he's not going to be a forward who knows exactly where to run and all of those type of things, because he's a ruckman trying to learn a forward position.
Yeah.
So you don't make him do those things. Try and stick him closer to goal and just be the guy that you want to kick on his head and just make him just compete in the air, and then give Grundy a rest when he needs to. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how their forward line works, because I think when Buddy went out over the last 12 months, I actually think it worked better.
Yeah.
From a goal-kicking point of view, and people might say, you're kidding me. Buddy's one of the greatest players I've ever seen, so don't get me wrong. But they were so Buddy-centric.
Yeah, diversity.
When he's playing, and Buddy at the last 12 months of his career wasn't anywhere near his best, but they kept looking for Buddy.
Yes,
because he's Buddy. I'd keep looking for Buddy.
Yeah.
So now that he's out, I just think the amount of times that they can go in now and go, right, they've got so many more options. I think it's going to be a really big plus for them.
Position number 4. Now, I'll be accused of extreme bias here, but it is the team I played most of my footy for, the pride of South Australia.
We're the pride of South Australia.
All right, the Crowies, the Adelaide Crows, 11-12 last year. They felt like a better team than that, but you are what your win-loss says you are. 11-12, 116.8%. They finished off with. The most excited to see, excuse me, the encore performance from Isaac Rankin is what I'm excited to see, because I think I used the word fearful, but I was a bit scared for him going into Adelaide as potentially the highest paid player that's ever played for them as a small forward. But he was absolutely outstanding last year, particularly in the first half of the season. And I can't wait to see what he's going to do the second time around because he's more comfortable. He knows everyone. He understands how Matthew Nixon and the coaching group want him to play. And hopefully the natural maturation of Josh Richelli, who your Giants, your GWS Giants, they found him out because Josh Richelli, like a lot of young talented forward mids, has probably played every game of football ever up to this point on his terms, how he wanted to play.
Yes.
Underage footy, school footy, even his first 8 or 10 AFL games. I imagine the message to him would be just go out and play how you play. Now, the Giants roughed him up and he reacted poorly and he paid the price. And unfortunately for him, he's going to have to continue to deal with that because he is a raw talent. He's a precocious talent. But Rankin and Richelli are excitement machines. They light up Adelaide Oval. They're capable of doing anything at any time. The sure thing for me is Adelaide will continue to be deadly at home. They won both showdowns last year. They blew Carlton away in the opening first quarter of Gather Round. They smoked Brisbane in Adelaide, and they took the Premiers to the brink, both in Melbourne and in Adelaide. They score heavily at that joint as well. And I think they probably have the most lethal home ground advantage in the AFL at the moment. I'll stop. Do they have the most lethal home ground advantage in the AFL? It's typically been Geelong
I think
or West Coast.
I'd say right now it would be the Adelaide teams.
Over Brisbane? Brisbane are a better team.
Yeah, Brisbane are a better team. I think when you're talking about the knowledge of the game and the support that comes through the gates.
Yeah, the crowd.
Yeah, probably
certainly.
Adelaide.
All right. The hope for me. Now, Darcy Fogarty and Riley Thilthorpe, they need to both come on and assist Tex Walker more. So Tex may kick 70 goals next year. But if he doesn't, and we probably expect that he won't, if he kicks 50 or 55, can Darcy Fogarty jump from 34, which is what he kicked last year, to 45? He's an accurate kick. He doesn't waste chances. He gets a lot of chances because of the way Adelaide play. Can he go from 34 to 45 and put himself as a genuine force to be reckoned with? Can Riley Thilthorpe go from 18 goals in 21 games to 30 goals in 21 games? It's not a massive number. 30 goals in 21 games, it's not a massive number. But in terms of what it does for the Crows, it will be huge because you've got Rankin and Richelli and others who will help kick a score. The worry for me, Moons, continues to be that midfield group. Now, before last season, I said there should not be a stoppage that Adelaide ever has in the front half of the ground where either Richelli or Rankin or both are not there. They did that a lot. Lockie Murphy was there as well. It's the same in 2024 because Dawson is a dead set superstar, but he runs well, but he's not a burst guy. Laird's not a burst guy. He's an in and under type, and Matt Crouch is the same. Berry's the same. So they need Rankin and or Richelli to be around the footy because those guys use their legs around the footy. If they get it, they look to run away from contest. They look to go north-south straight toward goal, and that's what forwards love, and that's what that Adelaide group needs. So the worry is if they become a little similar around the footy, so those guys need to be there. And the X's and O's for me, and this is an open-ended question, the key defenders. Tom Duday's gone. Nick Murray's coming off an injury layoff, and we're not sure when he returns. Jordan Butts has had more injuries than your average 22, 23-year-old. So I'm sorry, Daniel Curtin, top 10 draft pick, we might need you from the get-go. You're 197 centimetres, and I was able to dig up the fact that you're 94 kilos. Maybe we need you from round one. And if you can hold up, young man, Adelaide are good to go. And that's why I've got them in fourth.
What I will say is, and everyone's going to be jumping up and down about this, and that's okay. Every year, JJ, every year without fail, someone from outside the 8 jumps into the top 4.
Yep.
Now, we talk about home ground advantage, and I was lucky enough, or we were lucky enough to be involved down in Geelong where I saw firsthand just how important it really is. Now, the interstate teams, when they're up and going, it really is. It's so hard to travel to those states and those teams when they're all going well. So, yes, Brisbane right now, arguably the hardest road trip on on the cards, and then you throw in Adelaide for that as well, who will be getting what's it hold over there?
52-3.
They'll have 50,000 every week.
Yeah. Well, they're
Without
exciting
doubt.
to watch, aren't
Yeah,
they?
exciting to watch. Rochelle and Rankin, couldn't agree more. Give them more midfield time. They're still young kids, so you can't put them in there on a
Full
consistent
time, yeah.
basis. They've got young bodies. They'll get bashed up. They'll get sore. They'll get injured. But you put them in there for 5-minute spurts at a time and just let them go. Let them run. As you said, use their speed, use their legs, and then you throw them down forward where they are crafty, they're smart, they're game breakers, they're excitement
kick goals
machines.
from nowhere.
You know, all of those type of things. But I think for me, the biggest one, I've been a big Fogarty fan for a long time. I hope he's the fittest that he's ever been.
Yep.
And I'm sure he is. We talk about weights and all those type of things. For mine, if he dropped a few kilos, I reckon he'll just travel the ground a hell of a lot better because he does need to start kicking. He's up to 80 games now. This is where it should click for him.
Yeah, it's time to go, isn't it?
It's time for him to now go. It is time now for Tex to take the pressure off him. And if he kicks 50, 60 Tex, that's a great year. A great year for someone his age. 70-plus goals last season was just extraordinary.
Unbelievable.
That was out of this world. So now Fogarty, you should be pushing around that 50 mark.
Yeah.
That's your goal, mate. That's what they need from you. Phil Thorpe, the same. That's got to be around the 35 plus as that third key forward.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to get your goals.
Still
And
21,
still
so
21.
we're not asking him to break games apart.
But you're getting the third best defender. Like at
and
20,
you're pick 2.
yeah, at 21, you've got so much talent. 30 plus goals. That should be your goal. But yeah, they're the big ones for me. That Fogarty one, allow Rankin and Rochelle up through the middle. We talk about Dawson.
Oh,
Now, Sydney, there's a couple of texts come in and say, Sydney missed Dawson. Well, they made a grand final without Dawson.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody thought that this is what they were going to get from Dawson. And I don't think anybody, and I'll put my hand up and I don't know the guy, but how the hell did he become captain for one? And then all of a sudden, he become a great captain.
yeah.
Like that was just,
he was.
I was blown away with that.
His ascension since the moment he arrived in Adelaide, and it was almost from that game-winning goal after the siren. Bit of fate there. Lockie Murphy goes down with an injury. He gets that kick. He kicks a goal. He has not put a foot wrong, and he is a remarkable player. He is an absolute superstar. And yeah, I in their heart of hearts, I don't reckon if you ask Hamish Ogilvy and Justin Reid, they'd be able to say, yeah, that's who we thought we were getting. Their song was the last song we heard in 2023. It is the Black and White Army. There's people in the studio hearing this, or outside the studio hearing this, still celebrating, which is amazing. It speaks to
They're everywhere, JJ.
They are. They're everywhere. The Collingwood Army, the Black and White Army, whatever you want to call them, they are absolutely everywhere. But I've got them dropping from first to third next year. Less about why they drop, more about the teams who jump them. So 18-5, 127% last year, went on to win the premiership. Most excited to see Lockie Schiltz. Now, this was the trade move that did come from next to nowhere. So, a really, really fine player at Fremantle. But this feels like a really shrewd piece of recruiting from the Pies list management group. I think we'll all... Now, people who watch Fremantle all the time, and Fremantle fans will probably say, what are you talking about? Of course he's a gun. We know he's a gun. You're just going to try and rub it in our face, going to Melbourne and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, AFL fans at large are going to be exposed to Lockie Schiltz more than they have been.
Yes.
And therefore, I think everyone is going to say, well, holy heck, this is a very, very good footballer. This guy, I think next year will be about 15 plus disposals per game and around that 1.75 to 2 goals per game. So think sort of Tom Papley style player, which would automatically throw him up to, and there'll be a Collingwood element here, All-Australian type area. So 15 plus disposals, 1.75 to 1.8 goals per game. That's 35, 36, 37 goals. That gets him in the squad probably. So excited to see what Lockie Schiltz can add to an already dynamic group. The sure thing for me is he gets talked about more than any other player. There'll be no drop-off at all from Nick Dacos, none whatsoever, because he might be the sport's already greatest professional. The way he looks after himself. Now, we know he lives at home and there's a few advantages in terms of living at home, in terms of looking after yourself,
Well, he
and
doesn't have to pay rent.
your training gear's looked after, and nice meals and all these sorts of things. But you've only got to follow along with a lot of the Collingwood players, to be honest. But the way that he prepares himself, the way he speaks, the way he talks about the game, and he is learning from maybe the best preparer of all time in Scott Pendlebury. You've only got to look at Scott Pendlebury's body and the way he looks after himself and the way he's still playing to understand that he is one of the great preparers of all time. So there'll be no drop-off from Nick Dacos at all. The hope for me, or the hope for Collingwood fans, is that there is still upside in the squad, and I think there is, and there'll need to be, because we've got a couple of long-term injuries we need to cover. So Ash Johnson and Nathan Kruger. Johnson certainly, Kruger maybe to a lesser extent. They've both shown glimpses across their brief careers, but both have had interrupted careers. Collingwood love Nathan Kruger, and I understand why. He was at Geelong for 1 year when I was there. One of the great athletes you'll ever see, like just fast twitch, 6'3", explosive. He made some moves at training at Geelong. You think, my goodness gracious, that just not many guys can do that type of stuff. But I've said this before, your best ability in footy or in any sport is your availability, and he's not available enough. He gets injured too often. Some of it may be completely outside of his control, but the reality is if you're not available, then you're no good to anyone. Johnson's talent is clear for all to see, and we've seen it, I guess, on show in a couple of different ways. We saw him show the footy to the crowd in the VFL and then get run down, and there's clearly, I guess, he's maturing as he goes, but I guess an even effort, more consistency in terms of all facets of the game would be his RFI. So there's certainly upside when it comes to Johnson and Kruger. The worry would be, now, Craig McRae come across to the Pies from Richmond. Now, Damien Hardwick was big on his themes and selling a story to his team and playing more on connectivity and being, unified as much as he did on system. So Craig McRae goes into year 3, and he's openly stated, he joins Gazy and Andy on this show every fortnight, and he talks about, we use themes and we use stories, and I like to come up with things and sit on the computer and come up with them. How long can it last, right? So, Moons, you've played, and I don't know whether you had, Bomber Thompson was probably different in the sense, Chris Scott was probably different, but, coaches who like to lean into themes and like to try to motivate you, particularly when you've had some success or you're starting to get on in your career, you can sit there sometimes and think, oh, here we go again. Here's another story. Here's another, another war story or another climb another mountain. At some point, those types of messages don't sink in and they don't get through as much as they did at the start. Yeah. So we're at year 3 for Craig McRae. Damien Hardwick was able to make it work for 5 years. So there's no reason why it won't continue on. But it does, when it stops clicking on an emotional front, you can see a quick drop-off and a quick dip in performance. From an X's and O's point of view, I think the defense, I should say, could quickly need a rebuild. So Nathan Murphy's had some concussion issues, and we know that those players are, I guess, only 1 or 2 hits away from being out for an extended period of time. Bully Frampton's probably a needs-specific type of guy. We saw him play a role on Harris Andrews in the grand finals of forward. We've seen him come in and play on the big-bodied full forwards as a full back. So he's probably needs only. And Jeremy Howe's 34 in the middle of next year. So, if Murphy was to have some issues, Frampton's not necessarily needed against these more athletic forwards, and Jeremy Howe's 34. So quickly you could see that key defensive stocks need a break. And then when it comes to McStay, we know there's issues there with his body. He won't be there for 2024. So who helps my check? Is it Cox and Cameron as a 1-2 punch in the ruck / forward? We saw some signs of them sacking that. Or can Johnson or Kruger come in and perform in the absence of McStay? So that's where I've got the Pies finishing 3rd. They can win the flag. By no means can they not win the flag, but I've got them dropping from 1st to 3rd. Position number 2, they almost sacked the coach in 23. They stuck with him. They looked like they were going to win a prelim final, only to see them collapse in quarters 2, 3 and 4. But, da-da-da-da-da.
We are the Navy Blues. We are
the Navy Blues. The man who normally sits in this chair would be salivating at this proposition. But I am most excited to see them at full noise, full momentum. So we're not going to endure, do we keep Michael Voss? Do we get rid of Michael Voss? Is this player good enough? Is that player good enough? Because they made it to a prelim final.
Yes.
And They started that prelim final in fantastic fashion. So I'm excited. Blues fans should be as well. I was keen on their chances. I didn't understand why they weren't playing as well as they should have early last year, but now with some belief and with proven and tangible September success, what can they do in 24? I'm excited to see it. The sure thing, now a couple of these, I'll keep them short, not because we're short of time, because I believe it. My sure thing is that Sam Walsh plays every game and wins the Brownlow. That's as simple as it needs
I would
to
not
be.
disagree with that.
Up and down the ground, he's a workhorse. Mm-hmm. I think the umpires will look away from Cripps and they'll look straight at number 18.
I think he's their most important player.
Agree. Maybe the guy at fullback. My hope is Jacob Wiedering's calf issues, they take as long as they need to take, and we never hear about his calf again in 2024. Because if we do, then bad things are in store for the Blues. If they don't have him, they're in trouble. The worry, I guess, I'm not worried about a lot with Carlton, but the worry is the Blues do Blues things. Now, I don't even really know what that means. Carlton fans tell me more about Blues doing Blues
if
things.
you're a Carlton supporter, you know what he means.
You know what I mean. I don't really even know what I'm talking about, but Blues fans tell me all the time.
I think those moments have gone.
I think they are too. I think they've gone too. So the other obvious worry, again, I just touched on it. If Wiedering has any type of setback or recurring issues with that little baby cow, and it's not a baby cow, he's got a big leg. If he has any issues with that calf, then there's problems because we saw him out of the side and look, Marchbank needs to be a third tall defender, as does McGovern. So, Lewis Young can fill a role, but it's all about Wiedering down back. X's and O's for them. I think they need to get their ruck forward situation sorted. So I don't think they can play I'd prefer them not to play Pitnet and De Koning. I want De Koning to be 75% ruck. I actually was saying Harry Mackay should be the backup ruck, but they went to it for one game very late in the season and he struggled. Mm-hmm. He looked like someone who had been told on Wednesday you're going to go into the ruck this week and he hadn't done it. He gave away free kicks. He looked like he really struggled, but Moons, he's 202 centimetres and 105 or 6 kilos, and he's quite athletic. You tell me why he can't do it.
And I think it also, every now and then, he needs to get outside of 50.
Exactly.
And just allow Curnow to be in there.
And the beauty is, if he is playing well, Jack Silvani can go and do a bit of that ruck work. So they've got options there. I think Tom De Koning, Harry Mackay, Jack Silvani and Charlie Curnow is the way that they can move forward. Now, Pitnet will have a role, but I don't think it is each and every week. Mm-hmm. So that's my look at Carlton, which can only mean the premier for 2024 is the team that fell a kick short in 2023, the pride of Brisbane Town. They had a fantastic season in 2023. They were a kick away. They were a steel side bottom 55-metre drop punt.
Never happened before, never happen again.
From winning the premiership, 17-6 last year. The most excited to see for me is just version 2.0. Now, the Salty Border again just come and shot me down and said they had the worst record of top 8 teams at the MCG, but they're past that, aren't they? Now, the record is the record. Their numbers are their numbers, but they're past that. They proved for 99% of that grand final that they can play in a big game at the G and play well against the Collingwood Army. So no issues there. I'm excited to see what they can do with that finals experience under their belt. The sure thing for me is they'll be a force to be reckoned with. I don't think there'll be any drop-off from them. They'll be deadly at the Gabba and they'll be even better on the road as they get more and more competent and competitive throughout the season. The hope for me, Eric Hipwood hopefully has some sort of Joe Danaher-like maturation. Danaher had an incredible season last year. If Hipwood can improve 5%, maybe 8, 10%, then he can explode, and I think they can explode as well. The worry? None. I got no worries.
No worries?
Not a single worry in the world with Brisbane. I think they'll be there when the whips are cracking.
When does Ashcroft come back?
Middle to late part of the year. Yeah, it'll just be an added bonus for them. The X's and O's, I think they need 1 or 2 more kickers. So, of course, Daniel Rich goes, but Kadeen Coleman teams will sit on him a bit more. He's a great kick. He's an electric player. I think they'll sit on him. Duday comes in, but he's a great intercept mark, but he's not a great kick. He's a good kick. Does Darcy Wilmot's kicking come on a bit? Maybe. Starcevic, maybe. Zorko kicks the ball well. Lockie Neal kicks it all right. I reckon they need 1 more good kicker. McCluggage is a good field kick, but not necessarily a great kick for goal. But in that middle part of the ground, I reckon they need 1 more field kick. But I'm not worried about the Lions. I reckon they'll win the premiership in 2024. like they did way back when in 2001, 2 and 3.
That was the
Tell you what, that was a
best
lot of
team, mate.
work.
That was good, mate. Well done. You smashed that.